Okay, good morning everyone. It's great to have you all here. It's very cool to have a in-person conference, and I think one of the reasons we did this was because we used to have the CANS conferences, audit conferences, and it was great to get together, and one of the best parts was the networking. So I see everybody's just enjoying being together again. Bill was saying he knows pretty much a lot of the faces here from back in the day, so and it's great to have him here, and it's great to have Paul here and some of the other kind of people that have been around for a long time in the profession. And so what we're going to do today is keep our sessions kind of short, hopefully, and have some questions at the end if we have time. Timothy, can I have my timer on here? Where's Timothy? Okay, you'll have to tell me when my time's up. Somebody will. All right, so I'm just going to dive in. So all this technology is kind of new, so we're learning as we go. All right. Okay, so in his 2009 book, Start With Why, anybody read that book? Start With Why. Simon Sinek describes how unless we understand what and it can articulate why we do what we do, we tend to get hung up in the how and the what. And I think it's easy for us as auditors to get hung up in the how and the what. So we all know what we do. We're auditors, we audit, and some of us know how to do it better than others, and we're going to talk about that a lot at the conference, but I want to do what the book says here and start with why. Sinek says that making a profit is not a why, it's a result. And if all we're doing is going out there to try and make a profit, then that's not actually going to sustain us well. So your why, by your why, he means your purpose, your cause, your belief. Why do we exist? And he talks about how people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So I want to talk in this first session about some of the whys. This is his diagram about the why in the centre, and then the how and the what flow out of that. So it's important to understand that why. So this is kind of a high-level view that we're going to talk about. So the first session I want to talk about some of the whys. Why auditing? And could it be that some of the difficulty our profession is having recruiting at the moment is because there's kind of a lack of vision about why auditing? You know, what would attract a young person to be an auditor? So it's important to understand this and articulate it. And then we'll look at why we do Audit Assistant. Why Audit Assistant? And thirdly, why this conference? What do we hope to achieve? So firstly, why auditing? So much of the earliest writing ever found was, guess what, was accounting records. Some of the earliest clay tablets discovered are like a record of how many clay pots this guy has sold to someone else. And you know, when people start making accounting records, then who's going to follow along pretty soon after that? The auditors, right? Because in a society where you know your neighbours and you know if they're good people and you trade with them once and they rip you off, you know, you're not going to trade with them again. But when society becomes more complex and bigger and you move outside of the village where you know everybody and you're selling to a middleman who's selling to someone else, then it's not transparent. And at that point you need someone to come along and help to say, is this true and fair? You know, am I being ripped off here? So who would ensure accountability? So the auditor, often appointed by the rulers in those days to ensure that corruption was kept at bay and that the subjects were treated fairly, was the plan. And then in ancient Hebrew society, we see the proto-auditor emerging in the role of the prophet. For example, in the Old Testament, the prophet Habakkuk says, I will stand on my guard post. I will station myself on the watchtower. I will keep watch to see what he will say to me and how I may reply when I am reprimanded. Then the Lord answered and said to me, write down the vision, inscribe it on tablets, so that someone who reads it may run. So the picture here is of the watchman on the watchtower seeing what's going on and reporting on what's out of line. So this has a lot of resonance with our profession. So the prophet was the one who was called to watch and listen from the watchtower on the wall. And as you probably all know, the word audit comes from the Latin word for listen. So he listening and watching to see what was going on, receiving instruction from the regulator, God in that case, who had the power to reprimand both the prophet and anyone acting unjustly in accordance with the standards, which was the Torah, their instructions, to make sure that they had a just society where widows and orphans and strangers were cared for, and debts were just and no excessive burdens were placed on people through exploitation. And the prophet was to record all this in his on his tablet. So they had tablets in those days, probably a bit different, and probably not what we think of a tablet. And they were to record it in a way that was clear and understandable, and it would be sent by a courier or a runner. So the one who reads it may run, and they may act appropriately on that report. So this was their audit file. They would write it down in such a way it could be communicated to someone else. So there you go. We're all prophets. But the problem in those days, as today, is that sometimes the auditors would get a little cosy with the big boys kind of thing, and there would be a lack of division of independence, and so they would end up supporting corruption. And so this has resonance with us as well, is that the auditor's always got to take an independent stand so that we're not complicit with corruption in any way. And then we had the emergence of the corporation. So the corporation's a made-up entity with legal personhood. And Jane Gleason White, in her book called The Six Capitals, describes the corporation as having entitlement to all rights, with few responsibilities apart from self-aggrandizement, which might be deemed in a human to be psychopathic. So she compares the corporation. She looks at the DSM-4, which is the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, and puts it. And she says, according to that, a corporation fits all the specifications of being a psychopath. They hide their behaviour. They sacrifice long-term welfare for short-term profits. They're aggressively litigious, exploitive of workers, etc., etc., etc. So we have an auditor. Oh, this is the corporation one. So it looks like the Eye of Sauron, doesn't it? So we have the auditor. Now this is going to get people excited to become an auditor, eh? The auditor, the hero of a just society, the prophet, the adjudicator of justice, the tamer of the psychopathic corporation. But probably your clients aren't like that. They're probably more like the local bowls club, the play centre, or the charity. So why are we working for these organisations? Because these organisations provide the social capital that holds our communities together, and in an increasingly online world, real connection like we have today, where we see people face to face and we can laugh and we can smile and we can share a cup of coffee or whatever, is getting more and more real, especially after COVID, when people started working remotely. And often these small organisations, the local clubs, play centres, charities, associations, even small businesses, provide the social capital that holds our communities together. And these are often the kind of organisations that we in this room are probably most focused on. So charities running businesses are by definition, skipping forward. So Solicitor Susan Barker, in an article on the proposed taxing of charities, oops, too far. It's probably hard to read, but I'll read it out to you. She said, "The government consistently expresses how important charities are to society, but then in the same breath looks to slap unnecessary restrictions on them. Charities running businesses are by definition social enterprises. Charities should be encouraged to run businesses to raise funds for their charitable purposes, to reduce their reliance on donations and government funding. Research indicates that charities carry out their services more efficiently and effectively than government. In tax law, if tax law causes charities to reduce their services and government has to pick up the slack, the net impact on government revenue is likely to be negative rather than positive. So our work as auditors for not-for-profits in particular has a direct impact on the level of trust in the community. So we're sceptical. So, it's kind of the irony of it is that our auditing scepticism helps to increase trust in society because we're sceptical. Therefore, people can rely on these organisations as being trustworthy. And so we're contributing to a more cohesive society. So we have a direct impact on the level of trust in our community, and our work must be fair, reliable and efficient to enable this sector to survive and to hopefully thrive. Which brings us to the why of Audit Assistant. So on the front page of our website we say, auditing is a means to a robust, caring society through encouraging accountable and transparent business practices. Auditors support not only businesses providing employment and social stability, but a multitude of small charities, clubs and social enterprises doing good out there. We love making great, innovative software in collaboration with our users. So supporting auditors in their work and doing it with style is why we make Audit Assistant. I don't know why I put the doing it with style in there, but it's kind of an appeal to me. I think it's because Swicker's such a cool dude. It's like he carries it off for us. So the first part of the statement reflects the why of auditing. We find a resonance with many of our users because this is why a lot of you do what you do. You see the importance of supporting your local community, and you know people because of that. You connect with people, and you enjoy your work because there's that connection. You see a social good in your work. You love working with people who share that vision. So my auditing background began at Hutchison Hull, which became Deloitte at number 1 Queen Street in Auckland. I was quite proud of working at number 1 Queen Street on the 7th floor or whatever it was. And I started off working with big jobs like Farmers or the Kiwi Bacon Company or Ceramco. Remember those ones? I remember counting Crownland crockery in a stock take at Ceramco. Very cool. And then I left the smaller practices, first in Auckland and then later in the far north and later in Whangarei. And the whole approach was obviously significantly different, coming from farmers down to doing small iwi corporations or that kind of smaller type charities and community organisations. So the codified auditing standards prompted the development of version 1 that I used for my own work. So it was an Excel-based product that I developed beginning about 1999, and eventually we marketed that through Solution 6, and some of you might have come on board right back on that Excel version. Anybody use that Excel version? Yeah, a few. Yeah. And I first met Bill when he worked with Craig Fisher at Bowden, Impey and Sage, and I went to talk about how we could build Audit Assistant in such a way that it kind of worked alongside their manual that they'd made. So that's going back a long time. So that version was further developed and we marketed it through Solution 6. And then Matt came on board and developed a Microsoft .NET front end on that so that we could deliver stuff online. And then with the demise of Solution 6 and the introduction of the international standards, Matt and I sat down and we agreed that, okay, we can do this. And Xero had just started up, and it's like all this cloud software as a service stuff. Hey, we could do that for auditors. So we made version 2, which was about 2009. I think we released that. And so that incorporated the international standards, and so we grew and we added to the team and now become sort of the go-to product for the New Zealand SME market, thanks to you all. So one of the reasons we made Audit Assistant was that I saw the pressure coming on smaller and provincial firms where I had worked, and so many have had to close down because of the pressure that had come on them. The fee pressure, the way that the standards were becoming increasingly complex, and so it was sad to see these smaller firms who were supporting the local charities, clubs, and social enterprises to have to close, or either get better or close up. And so a lot of them decided, okay, we're just going to be auditing firms. We're just going to focus on audit. You can't kind of just be a GP or accountant anymore. You have to be a focused auditor. So so that's why we sort of we didn't want to see these small firms losing off to the large city firms, which probably didn't want to do the tiny jobs anyway, and were obviously going to charge a lot more. So, so another part of the why of our statement is we love making great innovative software in collaboration with our users. So this is our strong value for us, is that we like to share this task with our users, and we like to develop Audit Assistant with feedback from you all, and I really appreciate when we get feedback. And we'll have a lot of discussion later on about ideas and suggestions, and people have approached me already and said, have you thought about how we can use data analytics more, and all these kind of questions. So we will talk about that later. So our very high value is to respond to user problems, questions and suggestions promptly and personally. And you won't be talking to any... Oh, okay. You won't be talking to any donkeys, but that's not the right slide. This was my slide for the local charities and so on, who are being burdened by more and more regulations and restrictions, and how hard that's becoming for them, and they need us to kind of stand with them and advocate for them and help them out. So when you contact Audit Assistant, you won't be getting a robot. You'll be getting Swikrit or Timothy or myself or Laura or somebody real, because it's just not our value to do stuff with robots and AI responses or whatever. We love face-to-face networking, and we like to provide personal service. So the last part of the statement at our website says supporting auditors in their work and doing it with style. So this is how we see ourselves. So our work is creative and it's interactive, and we enjoy doing our work because we like interacting as a team, and we like doing creative stuff, and make auditing cool again.
Are you the one with the little Clive?
No, I took the photo.
That's your weekend.
It's like one of those things, how my mother sees me, how I see me, how my friends see me, this is how we see ourselves. And the purpose of, so we enjoy working as a team, and we enjoy working with you. And the purpose of this, that I've titled this session, is to build value, not just monetary value, but building a great team and a great work experience, a great service or a product, by leading from our values. And I encourage you today to think about, why do you do what you do? What are your values that you bring? What do you enjoy about your job? Build on that, and I think that will help attract other people to your team as well. And we're going to be talking about that as we go through. One of the great things that has really delighted me about Audit Assistant is the loyalty of our subscribers. And Simon Sinek says that knowing you have a loyal customer and employee base not only reduces costs, it provides massive peace of mind. Like loyal friends, you know your customers and employees will be there for you when you need them most. It's a feeling of we're in this together, because building on a foundation of why builds quality all the way down. And I do really appreciate you guys, and a lot of you give us good feedback, and a lot of you encourage us and say we really like your product, so that's huge for us. So that comes to our third why. Why this conference? So this session is helping you to think about your why. Why do you do what you do? So Cynic uses what he calls the golden circle, with why in the centre flowing out to how and what. So once we've got the why and the how then becomes more focused, and the what becomes easier. Then from that we want to help with some how questions. So we're looking about why, but the rest of the conference is really going to be about the how. So we'll be looking at some of the new features in Audit Assistant, and then we have a series of presentations that help you do what you do better. So we're going to look at Cameron's going to talk about Silks, how they've grown their practice while still maintaining their community connection. They're very strong in connecting with their community, and they haven't just kind of moved to the city. They're working within the provinces, which is great. We're going to hear from Laura Adenall about how she's maintaining a kind of a micro practice and running that really efficiently. And Justin's then going to take us through some quality management requirements that are appropriate for small practices. Then after lunch we'll hear from a series of speakers about taking a targeted approach rather than a brute force attack. I see a lot of audit files that I review, or some of them, hardly any, who just come in and it's like you do a bit of planning, but then you just do what you always do in terms of the audit. So, I'm talking about like a really targeted rather than we'll just audit everything, which is the subject of how we're going to that next session. Finally, we're going to hear from Paul from Practice Review, a long-term reviewer, and ex-practice reviewer Bill, and then Dawn, senior partner from PKF, about common weaknesses that they see in SME audit files. And then followed by a panel discussion, and we'll pull in Cameron and Justin to talk about their experience with SME audit files. And then tomorrow we're going to have some really important discussions around a team environment. So Ruben Rust will be here with us, and Dawn will also be sharing her experience of building a good relational team building. And then after that we have Bruce and Nisha from the XRB talking about the new standards, and then Justin talking about some practical aspects of the fraud standard. And then finally after lunch we'll be looking at new content in Audit Assistant, some issues that we've seen in applying that, especially around the new AS1 revised standard and around the transition to the new Tier 3 standard. And then after that we're kind of going to have an open panel discussion for us and the Audit Assistant team, where we encourage you to bring your questions and suggestions. So what we're hoping to do is that if you've brought any questions and suggestions for us, write them on a bit of paper and put them in the box at the back so that we have those in advance. You're welcome to ask questions from the floor as well. But so that's kind of our wrap up, is we'll talk about what's happening in the future with Audit Assistant and get your feedback and suggestions on that. I just want, while we're changing over to the next people, can you take a few minutes to consider your why? Anything that's sprung to mind as I've been talking about why you do what you do. If you've got a bit of paper and a pen there, so you might want to just jot that down, or you might want to chat to your workmates about that. Make some notes and come back later. So I'll finish off here and hand over to